Hey guys, so today I am going to be doing my August wrap up. I got through like 3 books this month, so I'm probably going to do a little more in-depth review on all 3 of them because I have a lot to say about all of them. So this might be a little bit longer than some of my other videos, but whatever. So yeah, let's get right to it. So the first book that I finished in the month of August was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And this book has been raved about on BookTube and adored by so many people. And I knew the instant I saw it and heard about it, I had to pick this book up. It essentially follows a young female in high school who has just recently experienced like the death of her friend because of police brutality. Her friend was shot by the police, and now she's the only witness to the incident other than the police officer. It's about her story of trying to tell her side of the story, as well as coping with the aftermath of losing her friend and dealing with a lot of other like just things in her world. She goes to a predominantly white high school and coping with that as well. And there's just a lot going on in this book. And that's probably one of my main issues with the book. I think it's a really good book. I thought about this book a lot because when I first started reading it, I didn't really enjoy it. And I was struggling to get through it, and I don't know why. Like, I love the idea of this book and what it stands for, and I think everyone should read this book because it does such a great job of explaining the African American situation. But for some reason, I just didn't quite enjoy it as much as I was expecting to. And I don't know if it's because I was just hyping it up in my mind and expecting it to just be this like profound revelation, but it wasn't really that for me. And I don't know why exactly. I think that this takes it on a softer level. This is definitely a book that, while it does bring up the issues of police brutality, it does it on a very PG level. I think this book could have gone a lot further in making it, I don't know, I was just expecting something different, I guess, from this book, and that's nothing wrong with the book per se, but just more my initial experience with it. But I do have to say that there is a lot going on. There's a lot of different side stories, I guess, to the main story. And I think that's also one of the things that I wasn't expecting, is that while it is about this Khalil, I believe is his name. While it is about Khalil's death and the Black Lives Matter movement, there's so much more to this story. There's the aspect of her dealing with being one of the few Black people in her school and what that feels like, and having to change personalities when she's at school or when she's talking to her other family. And I could honestly relate to that so well. I think that's one of the best parts about this book, and something that I just personally relate to because I know what it's like to be the token Black person in one section of your life and also being categorized as not Black enough in another section of your life. And I think that was really portrayed very well in this book. I also really enjoyed the way family is portrayed in this book. That's like another huge piece to this book, is how her family copes with it, how her family tries to get her through this time, and how her family is dealing with living in a poor Black neighborhood and what that entails, dealing with gang violence and trying to help young adults get through that. So there is the aspect of her dad, who owns a grocery store in this neighborhood, and he used to be a gang member, and how he's trying to reverse all of that by being a better person and helping other young men get out of gangs. So there's also a part where she's in a biracial relationship. I hope that's not really like spoiling if you guys haven't read this book, but she's in a biracial relationship and what that kind of dynamic is like after this situation occurs. So while I really enjoy Star's character and how she has to switch between different personalities when she's dealing with different people in her life, I also really liked how the family was well developed, and honestly I think my favorite characters are the mom and the dad in this story. They're just really cute, and I love how well this story portrays an African American family. It's just, it feels so normal in that sense, and I think that's well done. I just think that there's so much going on in this story and so much that Angie Thomas is trying to achieve that the Black Lives Matter part of it doesn't feel as strong as I wanted it to. I understand why she was trying to achieve so much, because there are very few books out there that talk about these issues, but I just wanted more, and I don't know, I'm having really difficulty like explaining my issues with this book. And I asked my mother to read it to see if she had some of the same issues, and she really loved it. So I don't know if I'm just the only one. I know a lot of people were saying that the writing isn't the best, and that didn't really bother me as much as I kept reading it, but there was just something about this that I didn't get the emotional impact that I felt like I should be having at this moment while reading this book. So I don't know, maybe I was just wanting something more profound and more just blunt about life. And this book does have a lot of humor, which I think is good, but I think it subtracts from the real issue at hand. And my one concern about this book, it is going to be some spoilers, so if you haven't read this book, I will put a little timestamp about where you should like go forward, because I don't want to spoil anything for people. But yeah, so you need to stop watching now if you have not read this book. Okay, so spoilers. You know how Khalil, it appears in the beginning that he is selling drugs, and that is true, and that he's also a part of this gang. And then as we slowly find out, it's not as true. Like he was selling drugs, but it was to help his mother get out of some debt, and he was never a part of this gang. And while I think that's interesting, and I think I understand why she included that as a part, like, it's the perception that is really damaging to African Americans, and that looking further down you can see that people are doing things for reasons. It's not because they're evil or want to be a part of these gangs. It's because this is their life and this is what they have to do to survive, and I get that. But I feel like in a part she was almost making Khalil feel like this really great person to make us feel even more sorry that he was killed. But the way I feel is that it just shouldn't matter whether or not he was a part of this gang or whether or not he was selling drugs, that his life still mattered. There was no reason for this cop to shoot him. And I think by making him out to be a really great person kind of deters from that. I mean, I don't know, in a way, I think he needs to be a good person, because I don't think all people that are shot by the police are bad necessarily, I mean, sometimes they're just in bad situations, are at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I think another part of the story is that it doesn't matter whether or not you're a drug dealer or a gang member or any of that. Your life still matters, and our life still matters, and cops should do their best to try to preserve that instead of resulting directly to shooting people. So that's just kind of my opinion on that part of the book. I see where it's coming from, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But yeah, so back to non-spoilers. I definitely think this book is really good. I ended up giving it a 3 stars to begin with. After really thinking about it and listening to some of the thoughts of my friends and my family, I think that this book deserves a 4, and it's just a really good book, and I think it's important for everyone to read. So I would highly recommend it if you have not read it, because it's definitely a discussion starter, and I think it's a book that's very approachable whether you're African American or not. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. The next book I completed was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Maguire, and this is the second book in like her Portal series. I'm not entirely sure what this series name is called, but this is not necessarily a sequel, but it's a prequel, I guess. But it doesn't follow the same main character that we followed in Every Heart a Doorway. This follows Jack and Jill. They were like side characters in the first book, but interesting, very developed side characters, I would say. So it follows what happens when they go into the world. So it's before they get to the school. This book was really good. I think it definitely, well, I think this book is actually longer than the first one. It felt very rushed at points. Like the ending just happens really fast and you're kind of like, what just happened? But overall, I really liked it. I think the setting in the world was developed so well. I'm so interested. I hope she does more about this world because I'm just intrigued about it. I like the characters and it's interesting, this little pact that the vampire and the scientist had going on, and it was just really, really good. And I was always interested too how like the idea of children coming into this world was known by people, like this was a thing. And I don't know if that's something that you're aware of in like Alice in Wonderland or Narnia, but that was interesting too, an interesting take, like that children have come to this world before and have like lived in this world, and it's like a reoccurring thing that happens. So that was interesting. I think Jack's character is a little more developed in this than Jill. We do get to see why Jill kind of is the way she is and what motivates her to act in the first book. So it's hard to explain this one without talking about the first one and spoiling the first one. So I don't want to say too much, but it's definitely a really good book. I love the idea of how parents kind of put these impressions on their children to be a certain way and how that can be really detrimental to kids in the long run, and eventually at the end of the day the kid will most likely be who they want to be but at a cost. So I love this book, and I think I liked the first book a little bit better, but I think the world building was a lot better in this one. So they both have their give and takes, and I've already pre-ordered the third one. This is definitely a series I will be buying for as long as she writes them because her work is just really amazing, and I love the themes that go throughout each of the stories. So it's very fantastical, very dark, and just up my alley, and I loved it. So the last book that I read is The Goblins of Bellwater, and this book comes out in October. I'm not exactly sure what the exact date is, but I'll put it in the screen below for you. But this book I got on NetGalley in return for an honest review, and I just was really intrigued not only by the cover. I mean, it looks really fabulous and really cool and creepy, but the premise sounded really cool as well, though I would not read the synopsis on Goodreads because I feel like it gives away way too much. Like if you read that, you pretty much read the book. But that's just my opinion. The Goodreads one just, I think, reveals a little too much. But basically, this book follows 4 adults in their like 20s, I guess, and they live in this small Washington town. There's a male who is kind of like this liaison for these goblin fae that live in this forest, and he brings them gold every month. And as in return, the goblins aren't supposed to harm humans in this town or make trouble, basically. And so you have these 2 sisters who live in the town. One of the sisters gets trapped in this goblin curse, and it basically follows their story of trying to break this curse and the relationships that ensue between the 4 main characters. You jump between each character's perspective and you get a look at what they're dealing with, and it's definitely got those good, interesting, magical parts to it. I would say if you're really big into fairy lore, this doesn't go into a lot of detail about the lore of fairies. There basically are 2 types of fairies that are described in this story, the goblins and then these local fairies. But I think the way she describes them is just really magical. And I guess the whole idea of this story is about nature, and I love how she incorporates the fae into this natural element, and how like the journey of figuring out a way to break this curse is kind of used through natural elements. So that was really well done. I would say, however, though, that this book is kind of slow, like in a sense, not in a bad way necessarily. Like I don't think the plot was bad in any sense of the word, but it felt like this book was meant to be more character driven than plot driven, because most of the book you follow these characters more so in their love lives and their conflicts, and then towards the end it gets more to this like epic fantasy type journey of a story. So I feel like we were supposed to get more character depth. I didn't feel very close to the characters in the story, and because one of the sisters gets put on the curse like in the very beginning, you don't really know what her personality is like, and so you're dealing with her throughout this curse. So then it's very hard to like figure out. They always talk about like what she was like before the curse, and it's very hard to like picture that because you didn't have like a deep understanding of who this person was, because we've been reading her since she's had the curse. So there was that. A lot of the characters just didn't feel very like fully developed in my opinion, but I think overall the story was really good. I enjoyed the plot, and I think the ending was done very well. I just wish that we could have gotten more in depth into the characters and seen a little more of their internal conflicts as well. But yeah, this book was really good, and I definitely would recommend it if you're into like fantasy or even like surreal stories. I think the setting was done really well. The Washington area is just, it's a great place for like magical stuff to happen, I feel like, and I think this story really did a great job of doing that. And yeah, so definitely check this book out when it comes out in October. So yeah, that is all of the books that I read in August. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're interested in reading any of these books, or if you've read any of them and have some other conflicting thoughts. I'd love to hear your opinions on The Hate U Give. I really just want to hear everyone's thoughts and see if I'm like totally in the wrong for not liking this book as much as I thought I would. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.